Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you back to the Dynamic Decisions podcast, where we explore the strategies that drive successful decision making in the world of business. Why? Because the best decisions come from great conversations. I'm your host, Tisha Cable, CEO of C Model Data, and today we have a strategic leader in human resources and talent. Her name is Roseanne. She's the Chief People Officer at Critical Start. She's got a robust background that spans executive recruiting, founding her own talent consulting company, and an impressive multi-year trajectory through leadership roles at Critical Start. Roseanne, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Would you tell the audience more about you and more about Critical Start?
Sure. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. So, yes, I'm the Chief People Officer at Critical Start. I've been with the company about 4 years. So, Critical Start is a cybersecurity company specifically focused on managed detection and response. Prior to Critical Start, I worked on another cyber company called Radware. Started my career in the talent acquisition space and kind of grew up in that space, taking on employee engagement, talent development, talent management, and then eventually, growing into the role I'm in today.
That's fantastic. So let's get started right into the topic. So the cybersecurity industry faces a talent crisis right now, right? Demand for skilled professionals far outstrips supply. So with companies competing really aggressively for the same specialized candidates, Critical Start operates in this managed detection space and response, which requires both deep expertise technically and the ability to operate under intense amounts of pressure. Can you walk us through a moment where you had to decide between hiring someone with exceptional technical credentials, but maybe the cultural fit for the candidate wasn't as strong, and let's just say cultural fit versus a candidate with strong team dynamics, but a little bit steeper of a learning curve was the sort of challenge. How do you kind of navigate that tension?
We have a balanced process. So we use a recruiting scorecard. So we look at, is the candidate a fit from a core values, competency, company competency perspective, as well as do they have the skills for the role? We also use a software called Predictive Index, and we have our candidates take both a behavioral assessment and a cognitive assessment. And each of those three categories has a points value. And overall, we have a scorecard per role and level. What is the different ranges they have to meet in order to be passed on to the hiring manager? But having that type of scorecard helps make sure that the candidate is really not only a fit technically, but a fit from a culture, a behavior, a company core values perspective.
That's good. I was trying to think to see if I had a good follow-up, but I think that you made that really clear, what you guys' process is for looking deeper. Let me ask you this about your trajectory
Sure.
in the company. So to me, your trajectory reflects both your impact and the company's growth. The fact that you've been able to excel up to chief people officer in the 4 years that you've been there. But it also means that you're constantly redefining your role while the organization scales through these different times. When
Mhm.
you're making decisions about building infrastructure, perhaps investing in like sophisticated performance management systems or talent development programs. How do you balance the need for enterprise grade capabilities against the reality that your next priority might shift in 6 months as the company evolves? What happens when the right HR investment for today's company size will be obsolete by the time it's fully implemented?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have to think about kind of what are the company's long-term objectives and always thinking ahead. So the technology we're looking to implement may solve today's problems, but is it scalable? Can it handle if we grow or if we add in other locations? So recently we've opened an office in India. We've faced a lot of challenges growing globally and finding new ways to recruit outside of the U.S. might be different than in the U.S. So thinking about those things, if the technology is scalable, can meet the future needs of the company is definitely something that I take into consideration when thinking about implementing a new tool.
So, how does that translate when you're thinking about the team that you're supporting is under this constant state of emergency
Yeah,
because we don't want this risk? So, you got security operations centers, analysts responding to the threats in real time. You
yeah,
got a sales team who's under intense revenue pressure.
yeah.
You're deciding on your people priorities. How do you balance the immediate need to reduce the burnout and support these stress teams versus building capabilities that might be long term, like building up leadership, development, succession planning, organizational health? Are there any like areas of responsibility that you feel that you have to focus on when you're doing this? And this is blending the other question down just a little bit here.
So we do invest in professional development and specifically in leadership development. So we have formal leadership training programs. So for individual contributors who might want to move into leadership, we have something called Base Camp, which is the very bare bones learning about being a manager. And then we also offer a manager training program called Elevate. So that's for your frontline managers. Maybe it's their first role as a people manager and putting them through a robust training program, which includes a capstone at the end. So they can really
Mm.
show they're learning and implementing what they've absorbed over the whole course. And then we have a higher level leadership program called Ascent. And that's really our succession leadership program. So for your senior managers, directors, senior directors, your future VPs, and that's an even more robust program, longer in scope. There's peer coaching involved. And again, they do a capstone at the end. So we are investing in professional development to really get those employees to the next level and really retain them and make sure that they're growing and they can be our future leaders. So hopefully that answered your question, but happy to
Uh,
dig into any other areas, but that's the first one that popped into my mind.
I think it's super important to give you guys a little kudos for thinking about retention in this way and really building in an evidence based measurement. So I like the capstones at the end. I
Yeah.
like the idea that you've got the succession planning because I think that that's one of the number one retention problems is that that
Mhm.
doesn't exist. People don't know how they're going to get from one phase to the next. And then that ends up having a bigger issue when you have people who are ready to leave and transition out of the organization for whatever reason, right? Let's say it's retirement or maybe the owner of the organization is ready to move on. If you
Yeah.
haven't done that succession planning, then it's going to be really hard to maintain. And we see that as a big, big gap in the market. So that's really cool that you guys are thinking about it. Hey, this is for our audience. I want you all to think about your own organization's people strategy and talent efforts. What people driven decisions have created the most meaningful impact on your business outcomes? Share your expertise and experiences with us on LinkedIn and other social media using Dynamic Decisions Podcast. Hey, let's talk a little bit about your leadership and innovation in the people function.
Yeah.
So you're leading this function. You serve both highly technical teams, security analysts, threat researchers, engineers, and business functions who have completely different motivators and career trajectories. So the
Mhm.
career path for a SOC analyst looks nothing like the path for a sales executive. So when
Right.
you're designing talent development programs or
Mhm.
comp structures or engagement initiatives, how do you create frameworks sophisticated enough to serve radically different populations without becoming so complex that managers can't execute them?
Yeah, great question. And I like that you mentioned the career pathing. So that's one of our company's goals for this second half of the year. So we have been meeting with managers across every department to identify what are the roles in your department? What are the competencies and experience that's required? We've created templates that we're working with managers to complete for every job. And then also a skills gap analysis that the manager can use to work with their employee to identify here's where I am today. Here's what's missing. Here's the future state. What can I do to close those gaps? And we've published all of those tools on our intranet. This is something that employees have wanted, and I think putting a framework around it and giving them the tools is a step in the right direction. We've already had some positive results with internal mobility and promotion, and the SOC specifically has a very defined career path. So they have things they need to meet in order to get promoted. So they need to get certain certifications or handle certain types of incidents. So theirs has been very much defined, and they were kind of the model, if you will, on how to roll this out to other departments.
Let's stay on this idea of ROI, these different
Mhm.
things happening. You report to the CEO and you work very closely with the CFO, I'm assuming, right, in
Yes.
this role. So you're in rooms where every people initiative has to get evaluated against revenue targets,
Yes.
customer acquisition costs, operational efficiency. When you're
Mhm.
advocating for these investments in employee experience, or maybe even things like mental health support or some kind of development program, how do you translate this is the right thing for our people into the business case that secures the executive buy-in?
It's all about the metrics and how you do measure the ROI. So our top metrics that we look at is the attrition. So every quarter and even on a monthly basis, what is our, regrettable attrition? So we have a target of having our regrettable attrition below 5%. So I'm happy to say we're always in line with that. Also, time to fill open positions is another key metric. So, the longer a role is open, that increases your recruiting costs, also tying it back to the business. So if it's a sales role, there's no one covering that patch and you're potentially losing revenue. So always showing those key top metrics and using that to explain the justification for, why do we need a recruiting team? Why do we need this certain recruiting software? Or why do we need to invest in, leadership programs? Because this is what the employees want. We also roll out engagement surveys. So we take the employee feedback to heart and showing the data from the survey of what matters most to employees. And if we don't, meet those asks, we're going to lose our talent. So just really giving the numbers behind why we need to have certain initiatives.
What's something that has stood out to you in what employees say that they want and need? And you don't have to just base it on your current situation. Like just think overall across your expertise, right? What are the things that you've heard the most? I'll just say the most interesting thing that you've heard.
I'd say the biggest topics have always been around professional development. Workload is always one where employees feel like they need that work-life balance and not have the burnout. I'd say compensation does come up, but we do a really good job of benchmarking to our direct competitors, and we calculate that during our merit cycle to show the compa ratio of how we pay to market. So that's another example how we're using data to make decisions. But I'd say those are the things that we hear the most. It's the burnout, the workload, also cross team collaboration is another one that comes up, making sure that communication is open across departments and that people are working together and that there's no bottlenecks. So those are probably the biggest ones we hear generally.
Yeah. Super interesting. So, professional development is all about people want to be growing, right? People want to grow as individuals professionally. I think about this cross team collaboration one. The thing that's the most interesting about what people want is they're the ones with less tangible metrics. The
Right.
metrics are harder to capture. You don't have as many very clear indicators. And I think this is what has to get developed in this future of work view
Yeah.
is how do we measure human performance at an individual level? Because that's what they're going to care about. So for me to stay
Yeah.
here, I got to know that I'm growing. And it's going to be more than my compensation. That's a piece. It's going to be more than I got the new role. It's going to be what did I actually learn along the way? Because this next generation, they actually care about that.
Right.
Yeah. So I think
Definitely.
that's super interesting. Anything you wanted to add there before we move forward?
I was just going to add, we implemented some of the programs as a result of the feedback. So the career pathing, the leadership programs, and the way we're going to track it is how many employees actually benefited from the career pathing? Did we have internal mobility? Did we have promotions of the leadership programs? Did those people actually get promoted? So those are some ways that we're trying to measure. But yeah, I agree with your point as well.
Okay, so here's my favorite little segment. It's called the decision making persona. We're going to go through an exercise.
Okay.
I'm going to explore your decision making style through this assessment. I'll ask 4 questions, which
Okay.
represent different approaches.
Okay.
After each one, you're going to tell me how much of it resonates with how you actually make decisions on a scale from 0 to 100%. But they're 4 and you only get 100% across all 4 of them, and I only give them to you one at a time. So no, I can't give them all up front. But after each answer, you're going to tell me a little bit of why. Right? So you'll explain your why in your answering of the
Okay.
question, but you got to give me the percentage, okay? Here's the first one. It's called the feeler. It's a values driven leader. So this persona prioritizes alignment with core values and mission, often weighing the human impact and cultural fit of decisions alongside business metrics. So here's the questions. When considering a strategic HR initiative or talent program at Critical Start, I ask myself, beyond the efficiency metrics, how does this decision affect the people who've chosen to build their careers here? The analysts working night shifts to protect our clients, the parents balancing remote work and childcare, the early career professionals trusting us to develop their potential. If we implement a return to office mandate that improves collaboration metrics but forces valued employees to choose between their jobs and family circumstances they've built around remote work, have we made the company stronger or just more convenient to manage? When cost pressures push towards standardized benefit packages over flexible programs that truly meet diverse needs, how do I balance fiduciary responsibility against the commitment that people aren't interchangeable resources? So, Roseanne, how much does approaching decisions through that human impact lens resonate with you?
Yeah, the examples you gave are real and relevant. So we don't have a return to office policy. We have a hybrid policy with certain roles being fully remote. I think if we were to mandate that, we would lose excellent talent. I definitely take that into consideration in that example. I would say, percentage wise, I would put maybe 30% on that question.
That's good. 30% feeler. Okay, here we go. Let's move on to the next one. And that's interesting to me because as the person in people, you're typically going to have a higher feeler number because it's kind of what you do. All right, here's the next one. It's called the planner. It's a strategic visionary. So this persona focuses on long-term implications and future-proofing decisions, thinking several moves ahead across multiple scenarios. So, when making strategic decisions about talent acquisition or organizational design, I'm positioning for 3 divergent futures. In one scenario, AI and automation transform cybersecurity operations, where our talent strategy needs to emphasize AI, augmented analysts, and continuous reskilling rather than traditional technical depth. In another, the talent shortage intensifies as cyber threats proliferate, making our ability to develop talent internally our only sustainable competitive advantage. In a third, hybrid and remote work evolves to where geographic flexibility becomes table stakes, requiring us to compete in a truly global talent market. Each future requires different capabilities. The first rewards learning agility and adaptability. The second demands robust development infrastructure. And the third requires reimagining how we build culture and connection. How do I build people systems that position Critical Start to thrive, regardless of which scenario unfolds? So, Roseanne, how much does that multi scenario approach drive your strategic thinking?
Yeah, it's definitely factors that I think about. You mentioned AI. We are a huge proponent of AI. We were early adopters of AI, even in my own people team. We're starting to craft AI competencies into job descriptions. We'll eventually add that into performance reviews. We invest in training in AI. So I love that example. So yes, that's at the forefront of is the future workforce going to look like, especially with AI. So this is something that is very important. I would probably weight this one about 35 to 40%.
35 or 40, which one?
Let's go with 35.
Okay, here's your next one. It's called the counter. So, this is a challenger of assumptions. So, this persona questions conventional wisdom and looks for contrarian opportunities. So, when evaluating talent strategies, I ask myself, what fundamental assumptions about what attracts and retains cybersecurity talent might be wrong? The industry assumes you need to offer top tier compensation and prestigious brand names to compete for technical talent. But what if there's a segment of a high performance who prioritize meaningful work, growth opportunities, and healthy cultures over maximizing comp? While competitors chase the same visible candidates with ever higher offers, what if we can build competitive advantage by identifying and serving undervalued talent, career changers, non traditional backgrounds, people returning to work who bring diverse problem solving approaches? When deciding whether to compete head to head with tech giants or create alternative value propositions, how do I avoid the trap where being different makes us seem like a compromise rather than a conscious choice? So, Roseanne, how much does that assumption challenging perspective shape your work?
I love that question, and it's so relevant to our company. So, if I think about the SOC specifically, the way we've designed how we recruit, train, and have career advancement in the SOC, we hire entry level. You really only need to have a basic understanding of cybersecurity. We don't even necessarily require a degree in cybersecurity. So, that is a way of how we're looking at different talent pools and then investing and putting them through training and having these career paths. So having that type of learning culture, giving people a shot, that's thinking outside the box. We don't need to go hire, a security engineer for every single role. Like having that, high potential entry level position has really been a game changer for us in differentiating and not having to go pay Google salary, for example. So this is super relevant. And to put a percent on this one, I would put I'm running out of percents here. So I got
You-
30, 35. Let's put 25 on that one
and that's going to leave you with 10, okay, for the
without knowing what the last one is.
that's right. Here we go. The very last one is called the data driver. It's an evidence based decision maker. So this persona relies on metrics, analytics, and concrete evidence to validate decisions. So before committing to major people initiatives, I ask myself, what evidence reveals which programs create genuine business impact versus impressive sounding initiatives that don't move key outcomes? I want rigorous analysis distinguishing between metrics that demonstrate HR activity, like training hours delivered or positions filled, engagement survey participation, and indicators that predict business results like quality of hire measured by performance ratings,
Yep,
retention of high performers versus low performers, time to productivity for new hires,
yep,
correlation between manager effectiveness scores and the team results. Here's the paradox: the metrics that prove HR execution, time to fill, cost per hour, higher program completion rates, are immediately measurable, but the outcomes that actually reveal whether we're building competitive advantage through people, like innovation rates, leadership bench strength, culture resilience during stress, often take years to manifest. How do I build evidence based conviction in our people strategy when the most important validation lags behind investment decisions? So, Roseanne, how much does that evidence seeking approach guide your decisions?
yeah, I love that question. So I do think I like to collect data before making a decision. So had I known that question was earlier, I would put more weighting to it. But I can give you a real life example. We have built HR dashboards for the executive leadership team where we have a lot of these metrics, the core metrics, but now we're adding in some of the new metrics that you mentioned, like retention of high performers, retention of new hire performance in the first year, and then also showing the trend analysis, like how did it change from one quarter to the next. So we're using Power BI for that. We're using AI for that. So that's something we just created, and we're in the phase now. We're adding that second component with a lot of the measures that you mentioned. So love the question.
That's really great. So that puts you at 10. Do you want to revise anything
I
you've
would
got right?
revise. Yes,
Yes,
I would revise.
let's revise.
Yeah. So just if you could refresh my memory on each one.
So right now your feeler is 30%, your planner is 35, your counter is 25, and your data driver is 10.
Yeah, I would definitely increase the data to probably 30
Okay.
and decrease my feeler a little bit to maybe 25.
Okay.
I still feel like I'm a planner. What's the counter one again?
The counter is the challenger of assumptions, and you've got 25 on that
I'd
one.
probably lower that one to 20. I don't know if that adds
Okay.
up to 100 yet
Let's see if
or my
that gets you
over.
100. So you got 25,
Mhm.
you've got 35.
Mhm.
Now you've got 20, and then you said 30. Let's see. You're a little bit over here.
All right, so you could take 5 off the planner and put that one at 30.
Okay.
I feel like
All
my
right.
strengths are the planning and, data, but I also feel like I'm a collaborator and I want like other opinions too. So it's a balance between the data and also like input from others. So collaboration, but also planning and analysis is how I would like summarize myself.
Okay. I got you. So we got you at 25% feeler, 30% planner, 20% counter, and 25% data driver. That makes your math work. That's awesome. Hopefully that was fun. It was fun for me. I always love doing this with folks because it gets you to thinking about how you actually think about these things. So here we are at the very end here. One, thank you so much for doing that exercise. You've built and you've scaled people functions from the ground up. And now you lead talent strategy in a very competitive industry. What is the most important insight that you'd share with leaders who are trying to elevate their people function from operational to truly strategic?
I would say don't forget about the human side of scaling. With technology and with AI, yes, they're increasingly powerful, but they're only as effective as your culture and your clarity and your transparency and your leadership behaviors. So if you build that alignment and transparency and trust, your people are going to outpace your system and your design. So yes, AI is a multiplier, but we don't want it to be a crutch. So that would be my advice.
That's fantastic. And remember, going toward strategy is really the future. That's where all of the AI and everything is leading us. So I think that is fantastic advice. It starts with your people. So thank you so much for sharing your insights, Roseanne. It has been a pleasure having you on the show. I really do appreciate your approach. Where can our listeners learn more about you and more about Critical Start?
Yeah, sure. LinkedIn, always open to connecting and sharing best practices on LinkedIn. And then, the Critical Start website, we have our jobs listed, we have our services listed, talk about our culture, all the great things that we're working on.
Fantastic. And for our listeners, please do continue to tune in. Thank you so much for being here. Remember, the best decisions come from great conversations. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to subscribe it, rate it, share it with your network. Let's keep the conversation going on social media using Dynamic Decisions Podcast. And until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep leading with purpose.